A father who swallowed his children whole. A son who castrated his own father with a stone sickle. A goddess born from severed flesh drifting across the surface of the sea. Greek mythology is not the sanitized version your school textbook handed you. It is a 3,000-year-old story about power, betrayal, and what happens when the beings in charge are just as broken, jealous, and petty as everyone beneath them. This is the complete guide to the Greek gods. From the first moment of creation, through the wars that reshaped the cosmos, to the divine beings who governed every corner of existence, and what each of them actually represents. By the end of this, the gods will not feel like ancient history. They will feel uncomfortably familiar. Before anything existed at all, there was chaos. Not chaos as disorder or noise, but chaos as a vast, formless void. The Greeks believed the universe began not with a word, not with light, not with sound, but with emptiness. From that emptiness came the first beings: Gaia, the earth, Tartarus, the abyss beneath it, Eros, the first driving force of desire, then Erebus, the darkness, and Nyx, the night. Gaia shaped the world into something recognizable. She produced Uranus, the sky, who stretched above her and became both her companion and her counterpart. Together they had 12 children called the Titans, along with 3 giants who each had 100 hands, called the Hecaton chairs, and 3 one-eyed beings called the Cyclopes. Uranus looked at the Hecaton chairs and the Cyclopes and felt something close to disgust. He cast every one of them into Tartarus, the deepest abyss in existence, and sealed them there. Gaia did not forget. She never forgot anything. She fashioned a great sickle from stone, presented it to her Titan children, and asked them to castrate their father and end his reign. 11 of the 12 refused. 1 agreed. Cronus. He ambushed Uranus and did exactly what his mother asked. He threw the severed remains into the sea. Sea foam gathered where they fell, drawn together by some force that had no name yet, and from that sea foam, a goddess was born. We will come back to her. With Uranus removed from power, Cronus took his sister Rhea as his queen, and the 2 of them ruled the cosmos together. The period of their reign was later called the Golden Age, the finest era of human history. Mortals of that time had no laws, no wars, no forced labor. They lived in extraordinary abundance. But Uranus had spoken a curse before he fell. One of Cronus's own sons would depose him, just as Cronus had deposed his father. The prophecy did not offer specifics. It simply promised it would happen. Cronus believed the solution was obvious. As each child was born, he took them from Rhea and swallowed them whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, 5 children, gone. Rhea could do nothing but watch it happen again and again. When she became pregnant for the 6th time, she went to Gaia for help. Gaia sent her to the island of Crete to deliver the child in secret. Rhea gave birth to a son she named Zeus, then wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and handed it to Cronus as a substitute. He swallowed it without hesitation, without even looking carefully. Zeus was raised in hiding on Crete by nymphs and a divine goat named Amalthea. He grew up knowing exactly what had been done to his siblings, and when he came of age, he came back for all of it. Zeus returned with a substance that forced Cronus to vomit. First came the stone, then Poseidon, then Hades, then Hera, then Demeter, then Hestia. 5 siblings, disgorged in reverse order, furious and ready. Zeus descended to Tartarus and freed the Hecatoncheires and Cyclopes, who had been imprisoned there since the reign of Uranus. In gratitude, they forged weapons for the 3 brothers. Zeus received a thunderbolt, Poseidon received a trident, Hades received a helm of darkness that made him completely invisible to any eye, mortal or divine. The war that followed was called the Titanomachy. It lasted 10 years. Zeus and his siblings fought from the peaks of Mount Olympus. The Titans fought from Mount Othrys. It ended the way all previous wars in Greek mythology had ended. The old power fell. The new power took everything. The surviving Titans were imprisoned in Tartarus, the Hecatoncheires were appointed as their wardens, and the age of the Olympians began. 12 gods ruled from Mount Olympus. They were not distant or abstract. They were jealous, vengeful, lustful, petty, brilliant, and fully capable of ruining entire civilizations over personal grievances. They looked like humans because they wanted to be close to humans. That closeness made them unpredictable. Zeus was the king, god of the sky, thunder, and authority over all divine beings. He wielded his thunderbolt as both weapon and symbol of total power. Zeus was also relentlessly unfaithful to his wife, and that single character flaw produced more conflict than any war in the history of the cosmos. His affairs with goddesses and mortal women filled an entire generation of mythology with children who carried his divine power and inherited his enemies along with it. Hera was his wife, his sister, and in many ways his most formidable opponent. Goddess of marriage, women, and family. Queen of Olympus. She had no real power to stop Zeus from doing whatever he wanted, so she directed her fury at the women he pursued and the children those encounters produced. When Zeus fathered Apollo and Artemis with the Titan Leto, Hera convinced every land in the world to refuse Leto a place to give birth. Poseidon eventually took pity on Leto and guided her to the floating island of Delos. Hera's war against Hercules, Zeus's most celebrated illegitimate son, ran for decades and included induced madness, impossible monsters, and the 12 labors that defined the rest of Hercules' life. Poseidon ruled the sea, earthquakes, storms, and horses. He was feared not because of cruelty exactly, but because of what he was capable of when he felt disrespected. King Minos of Crete once asked Poseidon for a divine sign to confirm his right to rule, and Poseidon sent a magnificent white bull from the sea on one condition, that Minos sacrifice it back to him. Minos kept the bull and sacrificed an ordinary one instead. Poseidon's response was to cause Minos' wife Pasiphae to fall in love with the animal. Their union produced the Minotaur, a creature that was half man and half bull, housed in an underground labyrinth and fed on human flesh, all because Minos kept the wrong bull. Demeter governed the harvest and the fertility of the earth. She was the reason crops grew. She was also the reason they stopped. Hades abducted her daughter, Persephone, and dragged her to the underworld. Demeter abandoned her duties and searched the entire earth without rest. Nothing grew. The world fell into famine so severe that mortals began dying in waves. Zeus ordered Hades to return Persephone, but Persephone had eaten pomegranate seeds while in the underworld, and because she had consumed food from that realm, she could not leave permanently. She was required to spend part of each year below ground with Hades. The seasons exist because Demeter refuses to allow the earth to produce anything during the months her daughter is gone. Hestia was the firstborn of Cronus and Rhea, the first swallowed and the last disgorged when Zeus freed his siblings, goddess of the hearth and domestic life. She had no recorded enemies, no affairs, no children, and almost no dramatic mythology at all. In a pantheon full of screaming conflicts, she was absolute stillness. Every household in ancient Greece kept a sacred fire in her name. She was the quiet at the center of a very loud cosmos. Aphrodite was born from the sea foam that formed around the remains of Uranus after Cronus threw them into the ocean. So the first act of violence in the Greek cosmos produced the goddess of love and desire. That is not an accident. She generously rewarded those who honored her and punished those who disrespected her with equal force. Though married to Hephaestus, she spent most of her time with Ares. When Hephaestus discovered the affair, he responded the way a god of forges responds to betrayal. He crafted an invisible chain-linked net, suspended it above their bed, and when the two were caught together, he dragged them to Mount Olympus and displayed them before every assembled god. The gods laughed. It took Poseidon's intervention to negotiate their release. Hephaestus was the god of fire, metalworking, and volcanoes. Hera threw him from Olympus at birth because he was born lame. He forged the weapons of the gods, the armor of heroes including Achilles, and the chains that held Prometheus to his rock for eternity. He also built his revenge against Hera into a golden throne so exquisite that she sat in it immediately upon receiving it, and found she could not stand. The throne locked around her and held. Hephaestus refused to release her until she agreed to give him Aphrodite as his wife. He received the most beautiful goddess in the cosmos as payment for a chair. Then she cheated on him immediately. Ares was the god of war, specifically the brutal and ungoverned kind, the violence with no strategy, no discipline, no purpose beyond destruction. Where Athena represented warfare as intelligence and mastery, Ares represented war as pure bloodlust. He was not widely respected among the gods, and was only feared because of what he embodied, not because of who he was. Athena was born fully armored and fully formed from the forehead of Zeus, without a mother, goddess of wisdom, strategic warfare, and craft. She competed directly against Poseidon for the patronage of the city that would become Athens. Each god was required to offer one gift. Poseidon drove his trident into the earth and produced a saltwater spring. Athena planted the first domesticated olive tree, which gave the city wood, oil, and food. The people chose the olive. Poseidon, furious at the loss, sent his son Halorotheus to cut the tree down. Halorotheus swung his axe, missed entirely, and killed himself. Apollo and Artemis were twins, both born to Zeus and Leto on the floating island of Delos after Hera's interference nearly made their birth impossible. Apollo governed archery, music, prophecy, healing, the sun, and poetry. He was the patron of the oracle at Delphi, the most consulted prophetic site in the ancient world. He could lift disease from a population, but could just as easily launch it with his arrows. Artemis governed the hunt, the wilderness, wild animals, and childbirth. She was one of 3 great virgin goddesses. A hunter named Actaeon once accidentally saw her bathing in a forest pool. She transformed him into a deer on the spot. His own hunting dogs tore him apart before he could say a word. Hermes was the messenger of the gods and the patron of thieves, travelers, and merchants. He wore winged sandals and carried a golden rod, and he moved freely between Olympus, the mortal world, and the underworld with equal ease. He was also the divine trickster, a compulsive thief who stole from the other gods the same way he helped them, casually and without apology. He conducted the souls of the dead from the world of the living down to the realm of Hades. Dionysus was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Semele, the god of wine, theater, and festivity, worshipped at festivals across the Greek world that could last for days without pause. Below the 12, Olympians stood a vast second tier of divine beings, each governing something specific in the structure of existence. Eros was the god of desire and romantic love. Iris was the goddess of the rainbow and a divine messenger between gods and mortals. Nike was the goddess of victory. Nemesis was the goddess of retribution, specifically the punishment of pride and hubris, the force that dragged down anyone who thought themselves above consequence. Eris was the goddess of discord, and it was a single golden apple she threw at a divine wedding, inscribed with the words, "For the fairest," that set in motion every event that eventually led to the Trojan War. Hecate was the goddess of magic, witchcraft, and crossroads, depicted moving through the dark carrying twin torches. Thanatos was the personification of death itself, quiet and passive, entirely distinct from Hades who governed the realm. Hypnos, his twin brother, was the personification of sleep. The two of them were said to live together at the very edge of the underworld. The sea had its own hierarchy below Poseidon. Triton, his son, was the messenger of the deep, carrying a great conch shell whose sound could raise or calm the ocean on command. Nereus was the old man of the sea, a shape-shifting prophet who held knowledge of all things past and present. Proteus was another prophetic sea god, who transformed into any shape he chose to escape those who tried to force his knowledge from him. The underworld was not a place of punishment by default. It was a place of order, ruled by Hades and his queen Persephone, and Hades was not evil. He was passive, fair, and extremely opposed to anyone leaving his domain without permission. His realm had a structure, and that structure was followed without exception. Every soul who died was required to cross the river Styx by ferry. The ferryman was Charon, and he required payment. The Greeks buried their dead with coins placed over their eyes so that the dead could pay the fare. Those who arrived without coins were condemned to wait on the far shore forever, unable to move forward into the underworld or back to the living world, just waiting. Past the river stood Cerberus, the 3-headed dog who guarded the gate. His purpose was not to prevent the living from entering, it was to prevent the dead from leaving. Each soul was then judged by 3 judges who determined its final destination. Elysium received heroes, demigods, and the especially virtuous, a realm of light, peace, and ease. The Asphodel Meadows received ordinary souls, those who had done nothing remarkable in either direction, who drifted in a gray and colorless existence for eternity. Tartarus received the wicked, the impious, and the imprisoned titans, where punishment was specific, creative, and permanent. What made Greek mythology survive 3,000 years is not the gods themselves. It is what they mirror. Every divine being in this pantheon reflects something recognizable. Hera's jealousy, Zeus's pride, Demeter's grief, Hephaestus's humiliation, Poseidon's wounded ego over a city that chose an olive tree. The Greeks did not create their gods to worship perfection. They created them to understand themselves, to look at a being with unlimited power and realize that power alone does not solve the problems that actually matter. That is why these stories still work. If you want to go deeper on specific gods, the heroes who navigated this world, or the myths that built the greatest stories in Western literature, click the video on screen now.